The laughter broke out before the bride could even lift her head. A man in the front row clapped loudly, shaking his head as if he had just witnessed the greatest joke of his life. Another guest leaned forward and whispered something cruel, not even bothering to lower his voice. A few women covered their mouths, their eyes scanning the groom from his worn sandals up to the frayed cuffs of his trousers. Someone laughed again, louder this time. The groom stood still. He did not flinch. He did not look embarrassed. He did not look angry. He smiled. Before the story continues, take a second to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and drop a comment below. Stories like this take time to create, and your support helps bring more powerful stories to life. The bride felt the heat crawl up her neck. Her fingers tightened around the edge of her wrapper as her heart pounded against her chest. She could hear the whispers clearly now. She married that? Is he even wearing shoes? Her life is finished. Her eyes finally lifted, not toward the guests, but toward the man she had just been forced to marry. He stood beside her, calm, almost peaceful, as if the mockery around them was nothing more than background noise. She hated that smile. "How can you smile at a time like this?" she whispered through clenched teeth, her lips barely moving. He glanced at her briefly, because laughter doesn't hurt unless you let it. She scoffed and looked away. Easy for you to say. The ceremony continued, though the dignity of it had long been stripped away. Every vow felt heavier than the last. Every cheer felt fake. Every clap sounded like mockery disguised as celebration. By the time it ended, the bride felt hollow. As they stepped outside, the village sun beating down on them, the insults followed. A man shouted, "Hey, beggar, take care of our girl, oh!" Another voice chimed in, "She'll be begging with you by next month." The bride stopped walking. She turned sharply, her eyes blazing. "Enough!" The crowd went silent for a brief moment, surprised she had found the courage to speak. But silence quickly turned into chuckles. One woman stepped forward, arms crossed. "You should be ashamed of yourself shouting like that. You're the one who agreed to this marriage." The bride swallowed hard. She knew that was true, or at least part of it was. Her parents stood a few steps away, refusing to meet her eyes. Later that evening, in the small, dimly lit room that was now her home, she finally let the tears fall. "This is not how my life was supposed to be," she said, her voice breaking. The man she had just married placed a bowl of water gently on the floor and sat on the edge of the bed, leaving space between them. "I know," he said quietly. She laughed bitterly. "No, you don't. Everyone laughs at us, at me. Do you know what it feels like to be pitied like that?" He nodded once. "Yes." She turned him sharply. "No one pities you. They look at you and see what you are." His smile faded, but his voice stayed calm. "And what is that?" "A beggar," she snapped. "A poor man with nothing to offer." Silence stretched between them. He finally spoke. "If you want me to leave, I will." Her anger faltered. She hadn't expected that. "You just leave?" "Yes." She looked at him closely for the first time. There was no desperation in his eyes, no fear, just quiet certainty. She turned away again. "It's too late for that." That night, she cried herself to sleep while he lay on the floor staring at the ceiling. The next morning, she woke up alone. For a brief second, panic seized her chest. Then anger replaced it. "So he's already run away," she muttered. But when she stepped outside, she saw him speaking with an old woman near the road. He handed her a small bundle of food and bowed respectfully before walking away. The old woman smiled and waved at him. "May your kindness return to you tenfold." The bride frowned. When he noticed her standing there, he nodded slightly. "You're awake. I left some food inside." She hesitated. "Where did you get money for that?" "I work," he replied simply. "Doing what?" she pressed. "Different things." She rolled her eyes. "That's not an answer." He smiled again, and that irritated her more than anything. Days passed. Every morning he left early, every evening he returned quietly. He never complained, never raised his voice, never defended himself when people insulted him. And the insults never stopped. At the market, a trader sneered at her. "So this is your husband? I thought you would have done better." She forced a smile. "This is who I married." The trader leaned closer. "If you need help, you know where to find me." She walked away, her face burning. That night, she exploded. "Do you enjoy this? Being humiliated every day?" He looked up from where he was mending his shirt. "No." "Then why don't you do something about it?" "What would you have me do?" She threw her hands up. "Anything! Fight back! Speak up! Prove them wrong!" He studied her for a moment. "And if I do, would it change how you see me?" Her mouth opened, then closed. She didn't answer. Weeks later, something strange happened. A child fell ill in the village. The family cried openly, begging for help they couldn't afford. By morning, the child had been taken to a private clinic in the city. When people asked how, the father said, "Someone paid for everything. I don't know who." The bride's husband said nothing. Another time, a farmer's land was seized by creditors. Overnight, the issue was resolved. No explanation. Whispers began to circulate. Someone is helping people. Maybe a politician. No, too quiet. One evening, she confronted her husband again. "Did you know about the child?" He nodded. "You paid?" "Yes." "With what money?" she asked sharply. He met her gaze. "Money I earned." "How?" He stood. "One day, you'll understand." Her frustration boiled over. "That's all you ever say!" Before he could respond, the sound of engines filled the air. She froze. They stepped outside together. 3 black cars rolled into the village, their polished surfaces reflecting the setting sun. Men in suits stepped out, scanning the surroundings. Villagers gathered, nervously murmuring. One of the men adjusted his tie and asked loudly, "Is he here?" The bride's heart began to race. Someone whispered, "Who?" The man's eyes locked onto her husband. He walked forward and bowed deeply. "Sir, we've been looking for you." The village fell silent, and for the first time since the wedding, the groom's smile disappeared. The silence felt heavier than the laughter ever had. Every villager stood frozen, eyes darting between the black cars, the men in suits, and the quiet man they had mocked for weeks. The wind kicked dust across the road, but no one moved. The bride's fingers trembled as they brushed against her husband's arm. "What is going on?" she whispered. He didn't answer immediately. His eyes were fixed on the man who had bowed to him, not with surprise, but with something closer to annoyance. "I told you not to come here," he said calmly. The man straightened, his face pale. "Sir, we tried to handle it quietly, but the board insisted. There are issues that require your presence." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "Board?" someone whispered. "Presence?" another echoed. The village head stepped forward cautiously. "Excuse me," he said, forcing a smile. "Who are you people?" The suited man glanced at him briefly, then back at the groom. "Should I explain?" The groom exhaled slowly. "Not here." But it was already too late. The bride felt every eye on them. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure others could hear it. "Explain what?" she demanded, turning to him. "Who are they?" Before he could respond, a familiar voice cut through the tension. "So the beggar finally shows his true colors." The crowd parted as her uncle stepped forward, his arms crossed, his lips curled in a smug smile. "I knew something was off. No poor man walks with that kind of confidence." The groom met his gaze evenly. "You don't know anything." Her uncle laughed. "Then explain the cars. Explain the suits." The groom said nothing. The suited man cleared his throat. "Sir, with respect, the situation is becoming public." The groom's jaw tightened. The bride grabbed his sleeve. "Please," she said, her voice low but urgent, "tell me what's happening." He looked at her then, really looked at her. There was something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Regret. "Go inside," he said gently. "No," she replied immediately. "I've been embarrassed enough in this village. I'm not running anymore." A few villagers nodded, encouraged by her defiance. The groom hesitated, then turned to the suited man. "You have 5 minutes." The man nodded sharply and turned to the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, there has been a misunderstanding. A scoff came from the back. Understatement. The man ignored it. The man you know as poor is... Wait, the groom interrupted. His voice was firm now. Not like this. The bride's heart sank. So it's true, you've been lying to me. I wasn't lying, he said quietly. I was hiding. That's the same thing, she snapped, her voice cracking. Before he could respond, another car pulled up, faster than the others. The door swung open and a woman stepped out. Her heels clicked against the ground as she approached, her presence commanding immediate attention. Enough, she said sharply. We're wasting time. She stopped in front of the groom. You can't keep pretending forever. The groom's expression hardened. You followed me. You disappeared, she shot back. Do you know how much damage control we've had to do? The bride stared at them. Who is she? The woman glanced at her, then back at the groom. I'm someone who works with your husband. The word hit like a slap. Husband, the woman repeated, slowly, studying the bride now with interest. So this is her. Her tone wasn't cruel, but it wasn't kind either. The bride felt small. You knew about me? She asked her husband. Yes, he said. Eventually. Eventually? Her laugh was shaky. We live together. We sleep under the same roof. When exactly was eventually? The woman sighed. This is getting messy. The groom turned to her sharply. Leave. The woman raised her eyebrow. You don't get to order me around anymore. A ripple of tension passed between them. The village head cleared his throat again. If there is business to be discussed, perhaps not here. The groom looked around. Faces that once sneered at him now were filled with fear, curiosity, and something dangerously close to greed. He nodded once. Fine. He turned to the bride. Come with me. She hesitated. I don't even know who you are. His voice softened. You will. They climbed into one of the black cars. As the door shut, the village erupted in whispers. Inside the car, silence pressed in. The bride stared out the window, her reflection staring back at her. Say something, she finally said. He rubbed his temples. I didn't plan for this to happen. Then what did you plan? She asked bitterly. To let everyone laugh at me? To let me think my life was over? I wanted a quiet life, he said. I wanted to disappear. And marrying me was part of that plan? He turned to her. I married you because you were honest, because you didn't want me for what I had. She laughed hollowly. I didn't want you at all. The words hung between them. I know, he said. They arrived at a modest-looking building on the edge of the city. Nothing about it screamed wealth. Inside, however, everything changed. People stood as soon as he entered. Phones were put away. Conversations stopped. Good evening, sir. Welcome. Thank you for coming on such short notice. The bride froze. Every word of respect landed like a blow to her chest. He walked forward, his posture shifting subtly. The quiet man she knew seemed to peel away, replaced by someone commanding, controlled. She grabbed his arm again. What is this place? Our regional office, he replied. Office of what? He stopped and turned to her. Sit down. She did. The woman from earlier stood across from them, arms folded. The board is in chaos. Investors are nervous. Your disappearance nearly caused a collapse. The bride looked between them. Collapse? Of what? He took a breath. My company. Her mouth drew dry. My company? Companies, the woman corrected. The room seemed to spin. He continued. I own several businesses, manufacturing, logistics, technology. The bride shook her head slowly. No, this isn't funny. I'm not joking. She stood abruptly. You let people call you a beggar? Yes. You let them insult me. His jaw tightened. That was never my intention. But you allowed it, she said tearfully. You watched me suffer. Silence. That was the cost of hiding, he said quietly. The woman interjected. You should know he walked away from billions to live like that. The bride turned sharply. Why? He met her gaze. Because the last time people knew who I was, they tried to destroy me. She sank back into the chair, overwhelmed. So what happens now? She asked weakly.
The woman smiled thinly. Now the country remembers his name. The groom closes out as briefly. That's what I was afraid of. Outside, phones rang, messages spread, whispers turned into headlines. Back in the village, people gathered around the black cars that still waited. Did you see how they bowed to him? That woman called him sir. Who did we mock? The bride's uncle sat heavily on a bench, his face pale. We made a mistake. A massive one.
The news reached the village before the couple did. By the time the black cars rolled back in hours later, the place no longer felt familiar. People stood in clusters, pretending to be busy, pretending they hadn't spent weeks mocking the man now sitting quietly in the back seat. The bride watched through the tinted window as faces turned away, heads bowed too quickly, smiles forced too late. "They know," she said softly. "Yes," he replied. Her chest tightened. "Everything?" Enough. The car stopped in front of their small house. For a moment, neither of them moved. "You don't have to come inside," she said suddenly. "Not tonight." He looked at her, surprised but not offended. "Are you ashamed of me now?" She swallowed. "I don't know what I feel." He nodded. "That's fair." When they stepped out, the village head rushed forward, nearly tripping over himself. "Sir," he said breathlessly, bowing so low his cap fell off. We didn't know." The groom didn't respond. The bride stared at the man who had once lectured her about marrying wisely. "You didn't ask," she said quietly. Others approached cautiously. "Forgive us. We were ignorant. Please don't hold it against us." The groom finally spoke. "Everyone makes choices." "And," her uncle asked from the crowd, desperation in his voice, "what choice will you make?" The groom looked at him calmly. "I'll remember." That single word sent a chill through the group. Inside the house, the bride collapsed onto the bed, burying her face in her hands. "My life flipped upside down in one day," she whispered. He sat on the chair opposite her. "Mine did years ago." She looked up. "Tell me." He hesitated, then spoke. "I built everything from nothing. I trusted the wrong people, family, partners. They betrayed me, tried to take everything. I survived, but I lost peace." She listened silently. "I disappeared to protect myself. I wanted to see the world without filters, see who people really were." "And I was part of the test?" she asked, pain lacing her voice. "No," he immediately said. "You were never a test." "Then what was I?" He met her gaze. "A mistake I didn't plan, and the truth I didn't expect." Her breath caught. The next morning, the village woke to unfamiliar sounds. More cars, more suits, cameras this time. Journalists. The bride froze as microphones appeared at their gate. "Is it true your husband owns half the logistics network in the region? Did you know who you married? How does it feel to go from poverty to power?" She stepped back, overwhelmed. He raised a hand and security intervened swiftly. Inside, she turned to him. "This is too much." "I know. We can leave." "And go where?" He smiled faintly. "Anywhere." Before they could decide, her parents arrived. Her mother cried as soon as she saw her. "My daughter, forgive us." Her father stood stiffly. "We didn't know he was—" "Stop," the bride said sharply. "You didn't care who he was. You cared that he was poor." Silence. Her father cleared his throat. "We only wanted security for you." The groom spoke calmly. "Security isn't money, it's character." Her mother nodded frantically. "Of course, and you have both." The bride laughed bitterly. "Now you see it." Later that day, the groom held a meeting in the village square. Everyone came. "I won't punish anyone for their words," he said evenly, "but actions have consequences." He announced scholarships for children who had shown kindness, jobs for those who had helped others without knowing his identity. "And for those who mocked?" someone asked nervously. "They'll live with the memory," he replied. That night, the bride sat alone outside. "You could have destroyed them," when he joined her. "I don't need to. Power doesn't require cruelty." She looked at him, really looked at him. "Who are you?" He smiled gently. "Someone still learning." She nodded slowly. "So am I."
But inside her, conflict raged. She remembered every insult, every night she cried, every time she wished she had never married him. Could love grow from that? As days passed, offers poured in, invitations, apologies, requests. The groom refused most. One evening, the bride overheard a phone call. "Yes," he said quietly. "Prepare the documents." She stepped forward. "What documents?" He turned. "We're leaving the village." Her heart skipped. "Leaving? For good." She hesitated. "And us?" He studied her face. "That depends on you." The weight of the question settled heavily. The question followed her into the night. She lay awake long after he had fallen asleep on the floor again, staring at the cracked ceiling, listening to the distant hum of generators and murmured conversations outside. Even now, people whispered about them, about him, about her. That depends on you. She turned onto her side and watched him. He slept lightly, one arm folded under his head, his face calm in a way that made her chest tighten. This was the same man she had accused of ruining her life, the same man she had felt ashamed to walk beside, and now the same man the entire country was beginning to speak about in hushed tones. By morning, she had not found an answer. The escalation came faster than she expected. A government convoy arrived before noon. Sirens wailed as uniformed officers cleared the road. Villagers gathered again, fear mixing with excitement. A man in a crisp suit stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Sir, the minister sends his regards. He requests a private audience." The groom didn't even blink. "Tell him I'm unavailable." The man stiffened. "Sir." I said no. The bride felt her breath catch. Refusing a minister was not something poor men did. The officer nodded reluctantly and retreated. That evening, her uncle arrived again, this time with gifts, expensive ones. He forced a laugh. Family should not be divided. She didn't invite him in. "You laughed at me," she said quietly. "You called my husband a disgrace." Her uncle swallowed. "We didn't know." "You didn't care," she replied. He turned to the groom. "Please, just one contract, one opportunity." The groom's voice was flat. "Leave." When the door shut, the bride leaned against it, shaking. "They're afraid of you," she said. "They're afraid of losing access," he corrected. Another day passed, then another. Every interaction became a test. People smiled too wide. Compliments felt like traps. Kindness felt transactional. One night, she finally broke. "Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded, standing in front of him. "Why let me believe I was trapped?" He looked up slowly. "Would you have stayed if you knew?" She hesitated. He nodded. "That's why." The truth stung more than any insult. "So what was I to you? A lesson?" "No," he said firmly. "You were real when everything else felt fake." Tears spilled over. "I hated you." "I know." "I wished you were someone else." "I know." She covered her mouth, sobbing. "And now I don't know how to feel." He stood and moved closer, careful, respectful. "Then don't rush it." The next escalation came publicly. A national business summit was announced. His name was listed as keynote speaker. The village erupted. They're saying his speech will move markets. They're saying he controls billions. The bride watched the broadcast announcement on a neighbor's television, her hands cold. "That's you," she said. He nodded. "I can't hide anymore." The day of the summit arrived. She sat in the front row, heart racing as he walked onto the stage. The man who once stood silently while villagers laughed now commanded the attention of the entire hall. Applause thundered. He spoke calmly, deliberately. "Power reveals who we already are. Poverty does the same." The crowd leaned in. He spoke about humility, about deception, about the cost of judging others too quickly. The bride felt every word land inside her chest. After the speech, people rushed him, investors, officials, media. She stood alone. A woman approached her, well-dressed, confident. "You're his wife." "Yes," she said cautiously. "You're stronger than you look. Most people wouldn't survive what you did." That night, back at the house, he asked her again, Will you come with me? She looked around the small room, the place where she cried, the place where she learned the truth. Yes, she finally said, but not because of who you are. He waited. Because of who you were when no one was watching. For the first time, he looked relieved. They left the village before dawn. As the cars pulled away, villagers lined the road, some waving, some silent, all watching. The bride didn't look back. In the city, life changed quickly, too quickly. Luxury replaced simplicity, silence replaced noise, privacy disappeared. She struggled. At a gala, someone whispered, "She married him without knowing. Imagine that luck." Luck. She excused herself and stood alone on a balcony, fighting tears. He found her there. "They don't see you," she said bitterly. "They see proximity." He leaned beside her. "Do you want to leave?" "No," she said after a pause. "I want to stand." He smiled softly. The next escalation came when a scandal broke. A rival accused him publicly of manipulation, claiming the marriage was staged to clean his image. The bride watched the news in horror. "This is my fault," she whispered. He took her hand. "No, this is the cost of visibility." Reporters demanded statements. Investors panicked. He was calm. At the press conference, he spoke clearly. "My marriage saved nothing. It exposed everything, and I wouldn't change it." He turned to her in front of the cameras. "She is not my shield. She is my equal." The room erupted. That night, alone together, she finally said the words, "I don't regret marrying you." He looked at her surprised. "I regret judging you," she continued, "but I don't regret choosing to stay." He reached for her hand, gently this time. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The calm did not last. The backlash came quietly at first. Canceled meetings, delayed approvals, anonymous messages questioning his integrity. Then it grew louder. Headlines shifted tone. Commentators dissected his past, his disappearance, his marriage. The bride felt it most in rooms where conversations stopped when she entered. At one private dinner, a woman smiled too sweetly and said, "You must be very adaptable." The bride understood the insult immediately. That night, she confronted him again. "They think I'm a liability." He didn't deny it. "Some do." "And you?" she asked. "Do you?" He answered without hesitation. "No." "But you let them talk." "Yes," he said calmly, "because if I silence them, they'll believe it more." She paced the room. "I didn't sign up for this kind of war." He watched her quietly. "I know." For the first time since leaving the village, she felt truly afraid. Not of poverty, not of mockery, but of being swallowed by a world that wasn't built for her. The next escalation arrived through an unexpected door. Her father appeared at their city residence unannounced. Security nearly turned him away. When she saw him standing there, smaller than she remembered, she froze. "Why are you here?" He avoided her eyes. "I came to apologize." She crossed her arms. "Now?" "Yes," he said quietly, "because now I understand what we did." She laughed bitterly. "You understand power, not pain." He bowed his head. "You're right." The groom stepped forward. "Say what you came to say." Her father swallowed. "I sold my daughter's future because I was afraid of being poor." The words landed heavily. "I thought money was safety," he continued. "I was wrong." The bride felt tears burn behind her eyes. "You taught me to survive, not to choose." Her father nodded. "If you choose to never forgive me, I'll accept it." Silence. The groom waited. He didn't interfere. After a long moment, she said, "Leave." Her father nodded, relief and regret mixed on his face. "I'm proud of you," he said softly before turning away. After he left, she collapsed onto the couch. "I didn't think it would hurt like this," she whispered. He sat beside her. Healing rarely feels clean. The next morning, a new threat surfaced. One of his former partners, one of the men who had betrayed him years ago, gave an interview. "He's dangerous," the man claimed. "He manipulates people. Even his wife is part of the act. The bride felt sick. They're using me, she said. He nodded. They always would. What do we do? He looked at her carefully. We don't hide. That afternoon, she made a decision. At the next public forum, she stepped onto the stage with him. Gasps rippled through the room. She took the microphone with shaking hands. I didn't marry a billionaire. I married a man I didn't understand. The room went still. I judged him, I doubted him, I resented him, and he stayed kind anyway. She turned to him briefly, then back to the crowd. If this marriage was a performance, I wouldn't have cried in that village. I wouldn't have been ashamed. I wouldn't have learned. The applause started slowly, then grew. Later that night, alone, he said quietly, "You didn't have to do that." "Yes," she replied, "I did." Another escalation followed, this one personal. A former admirer from the village contacted her privately. "If you ever regret this life, you know I always cared." She stared at the message for a long time. Then she deleted it. She turned to him. "People still see me as something to rescue." He looked at her gently. "Do you feel trapped?" She thought carefully. "No, I feel tested." He nodded. "Good." Weeks passed. The scandal faded. His reputation stabilized. But something shifted between them. One evening, she said quietly, "You don't sleep on the floor anymore." He smiled faintly. "I was waiting for you to notice." She hesitated. "You can sleep on the bed." He didn't move immediately. "Are you sure?" "Yes." That night, nothing dramatic happened. No grand declarations, just quiet presence, shared silence, breathing that slowly aligned. It felt more intimate than words. The final escalation of this chapter came when the government officially recognized him with a national honor. At the ceremony, cameras flashed relentlessly. The announcer said his name. The bride felt it in her chest. The same name that once meant nothing in a dusty village. Now it shook the room. As applause thundered, he turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Are you overwhelmed?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "I'm grounded." He smiled. And for the first time, she realized something clearly. She was no longer reacting to his world. She was choosing her place in it. The recognition changed how people spoke to him. It also changed how they spoke to her. At first, it was subtle. Invitations addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Calls that asked for his time but lingered on her availability. Compliments framed as curiosity. Curiosity sharpened into expectation. She felt it most during a private meeting arranged by one of his senior advisors. The woman smiled politely and said, "Your presence helps soften negotiations." The bride's jaw tightened. "I'm not a tool." The advisor blinked, surprised. "Of course not. I just meant—" "I know what you meant," she replied calmly. Later, she told him, "They're trying to use me." He didn't look surprised. "They will stop." "How?" she asked. He leaned back, thoughtful. "By learning you don't bend." The test came sooner than expected. A major partnership hinged on a single dinner. He declined to attend without her. The partners insisted she be present, then attempted to corner her into endorsing terms she didn't understand. She smiled politely and said, "I won't speak on matters I haven't studied." The room went quiet. One man laughed. "You don't have to pretend." She met his eyes. "I'm not pretending. I'm refusing." The deal stalled. Later in the car, he said, "You cost me a partnership." She waited. "And gained me leverage," he finished. "Thank you." She exhaled, tension draining from her shoulders. The next escalation didn't come from the outside. It came from inside the marriage. One night, after a long day of meetings and interviews, she finally asked a question that had been sitting between them like an unopened letter. "Do you love me?" He didn't answer immediately. Her chest tightened. "You don't have to say it if you don't." He turned to her fully. "I don't use words lightly." "That wasn't an answer," she said quietly. "I care for you. I respect you. I trust you." "And love?" she pressed.
He searched her face. I don't know yet. The honesty hurt more than a lie would have. She nodded slowly. Thank you for telling me. That night, she slept facing the window. The next morning, she woke early and left without waking him. She walked alone through the city, letting the noise ground her. She thought about the girl she had been in the village, angry, ashamed, desperate. She thought about the woman she was becoming, careful, visible, unafraid to speak. By the time she returned, she had made a decision. I need something of my own, she told him. He listened. I don't want to just stand beside you. I want to build something too. He nodded slowly. What do you want to build? She hesitated, then said, opportunity for people like me, like us back then. Within weeks, she was working with a small team, not as a symbol, not as a spokesperson, as a founder. She learned fast, failed publicly, corrected herself, learned again. The press called it a vanity project. She ignored them. The real test came when funding was questioned. Are you financing this? A reporter asked him. No, he replied simply. She is. The room buzzed. She stood beside him, steady. The escalation turned vicious when a smear campaign targeted her directly. Anonymous posts accused her of manipulation, of ambition masked as charity, of sleeping her way into power. She stared at the screen, hands shaking. I can't do this, she whispered. He took the phone from her gently. You don't have to read that. But they're saying it because of you. They're saying it because you matter, he corrected. If they didn't, they wouldn't bother. She laughed weakly. That's not comforting. He paused. Then let me say this. I don't regret you. She looked at him sharply. That's a low bar. He smiled faintly. It's also the truth. The next public appearance was brutal. Questions were sharp, faces skeptical. She answered calmly, directly, without apology. By the end, the tone shifted. Not praise, respect. That night, she finally cried. Not from shame, from release. He sat with her in silence, handing her a glass of water when she needed it. I don't need you to save me, she said eventually. I know, he replied. I just need you to choose me. He looked at her for a long time. I already have. The words settled slowly. The final escalation came from the village. A request arrived, formal, careful, almost fearful. They wanted him to return for a ceremony, to honor his contribution, to apologize publicly. She stiffened when she read it. Do we have to go? He considered. We don't have to. Do you want to? He looked at her. Only if you do. She thought of the whispers, the laughter, the humiliation. Then she thought of the children who had benefited, the quiet kindnesses. Yes, she said, but on our terms. They arrived together this time. No tinted windows, no rushing. The village square was full. People stood when they approached. The village head spoke, voice trembling. We judged, we mocked, we were wrong. He nodded once. Then she stepped forward. I was ashamed here, she said clearly. I learned here. She looked around. Power didn't change us. Exposure did. Silence followed. Then applause. Not thunderous, genuine. As they left, she felt lighter. In the car, she turned to him. Do you know what they see now? He smiled softly. What? Us. He reached for her hand. This time, she didn't hesitate. The city lights blurred past the windows as they drove away from the village. The hum of the engine filled the silence between them, but it was not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that settles after storms, charged, full of possibility, and yet peaceful in its own way. She leaned back, letting her mind replay the events of the past weeks. Laughter, humiliation, hidden kindness, secret power. All the moments that had once made her feel small now seemed part of a larger design she was only beginning to understand. You've changed everything, she said softly, almost to herself. He glanced at her, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. No, you've changed everything. I was just here. She studied him, really looked at him, for the first time since their wedding day in the village. Every scar, every quiet action, every moment of restraint, it had all been building toward this truth. He was more than appearances, more than whispers, more than anyone had guessed. I didn't believe in love before this, she admitted. I thought it was just survival and fear and waiting for life to pass by. He reached for her hand and squeezed it gently. Love isn't always fireworks. Sometimes it's quiet. It's waiting. It's seeing someone through the worst and still choosing them. Her lips curved into a tentative smile. Then I suppose I should start believing. The next days were quieter, though not without escalation. Invitations came from unexpected places, schools seeking advice, charities requesting input, media outlets asking for interviews. She navigated each with care, learning boundaries and asserting herself. Each time she stood firm, she could feel a growing respect from him, as though he had been waiting to see her strength bloom fully. One morning, he approached her in their shared study, a folder in his hands. "This is yours," he said simply. She looked at it. Legal documents, proposals, plans, all neatly organized. Her own project, fully funded and supported. Her own space, her own work, her own identity, validated. "You really trust me," she said, disbelief in her voice. "I've always trusted you, even when I let you suffer in silence, especially then." The weight of those words hit her harder than any accusation, any insult, any doubt she had felt in the village. She realized that this man, who had once been a beggar to her and everyone else, had silently endured much more than she could imagine, all to protect what mattered most, the people he cared for, the principles he upheld, and ultimately, her. Later that week, they returned to the village, not for the humiliation, not for the applause, but for closure. When they stepped into the square, faces turned. Some eyes widened, some bowed. People whispered, and the whispers carried a new tone: respect, admiration, and finally, humility. The village had stepped forward, older and wearier than before. "We were wrong," he admitted. "We mocked, we judged. We did not see who you truly were. We apologize." The groom nodded, calm and measured. Acknowledgement is the first step toward change. Then she stepped forward. "I was ashamed here," she said, voice steady, carrying over the murmurs. "But I've learned. Humiliation can teach lessons, but strength is built in response." Her words were not just for the village, they were for herself, for the growth she had undergone, for the partnership she had forged in adversity. The villagers listened, rapt and silent. When her husband finally spoke, it was with quiet authority. Kindness, courage, and integrity are more powerful than wealth, more enduring than ridicule. Never forget that. And for the first time, the bride felt no fear, no shame, only clarity. They had been tested, they had been pushed, mocked, questioned, and challenged, and they had emerged stronger, together. Back in the car, leaving the village for the final time, she leaned her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked softly. "Letting me see only the surface?" He said no, almost immediately. "Because in doing so, I found you. Not just the girl I married, but the woman who chose to stay, who chose to fight, who chose truth over comfort." Her eyes filled with tears, but they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of relief, of understanding, of love finally recognized in full. She smiled through the tears. "Then I suppose we can face anything together." He tightened his grip on her hand. Anything. The city lights blurred as the car sped down the highway, carrying them forward into a life neither had imagined on that first fateful day. Laughter, humiliation, secrecy, and discovery had all led them here, to a partnership forged in resilience and trust, in truth and endurance. And though the world would continue to speak, to whisper, to judge, the story of the girl and the man once mocked as a beggar had been rewritten. Not by wealth alone, not by status alone,
but by courage, by loyalty, and love that had been tested in every conceivable way. The bride rested her head on his shoulder again, finally at peace. He kissed her forehead, silently acknowledging all they had survived together. The last thing the narrator would say as the story closes: if you love this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Every story we tell is built for you, and your support helps bring more incredible journeys to life. As the camera pans out metaphorically, showing their silhouettes against the endless cityscape, the lesson is clear. What is mocked today may be revered tomorrow. Strength, kindness, and integrity endure when appearances deceive, and love, true love, has the power to transform everything. And with that, the story ends, not with the clamor of wealth, but with the quiet, unshakable triumph of two people who chose each other against all odds.